Good afternoon. Welcome to the Reckoning Brothers podcast, afternoon tea edition. I am Scott, and
I'm
I'm here with my
Josh.
good buddy Josh. Josh, cheers. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking the Yogis. What do you got? The berries?
I'm drinking Barry's Irish Breakfast Tea, hopeful future sponsor of the podcast, out of Kerry, Ireland. Delicious, delicious mix of black tea. I also look forward to trying their English breakfast tea in the future.
Well, I'm buying you some of this.
All right.
And one thing I wanted to say, Yogis has a nice little logo on their tea bag, but they also have a little saying on the back of each one of these, and they're usually motivational. But this is nice. It says, "Appreciate yourself and honor your soul." So, cheers to that.
That's very new agey of you, but I like it. I tried to honor my soul. I have no idea what the hell that
I don't
possibly could
either.
mean. It seems like just gobbledygook new age nonsense.
It
But I think I
totally
see
is.
what they're getting at, which is no, I don't see what they're getting at. I don't know what the hell that means. But more power to Yogi. I do look forward to trying some of that. If you're going to get me some and I know I have to pay for it,
Yeah,
I will try
I'll take care of
anything.
you there. You know,
I will try
we'll get a
anything given to me for free.
sponsor.
Yes, yes, until the sponsorship, and then I'm going to be locked into berries. I mean, there's
Yeah,
going to be nothing I can do.
yeah.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. could only drink Budweiser unless he was at home alone in his house for very good reason.
I
Be
can
the same
imagine.
exact situation. Josh, you said to me you wanted to talk about something uplifting
Oh, did
and
I?
positive today, and then I said, "Fuck that. We're going to talk about school shootings." Did it go down
Wow,
something like
that's a
that?
complete turnaround. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. School shootings, which is a depressing but important subject. And it's one of those that when I hear one of my big things when I'm talking about on here is the public conversations always seem dishonest and narrow and partisan and just like a idea sports competition. Whenever I hear anybody talk about it, for the most part, there are of course exceptions, really smart people. That's why Joe Rogan's so popular. Because it's an honest discussion for the most part. He's not trying to get one over on anything. But the school shootings topic, it just always seems like it's coming from a place, someone's got their mind made up ahead of time before they come into this as to what we should do, as to what the stats are. Even people don't look shit up. It's weird how little of the time that happens. But this is a crazy subject. So I looked up some stats from a
It's a
couple of different
difficult
places.
subject too.
Oh, it's a very difficult subject. And it's like, because then you remember things like Uvalde and how just emotionally draining that whole thing was, just paying attention to the news and how it turned out. And it's just,
Sandy
not to
Hook.
mention Sandy Hook. Yeah, exactly. Those other ones. But I mean, for me, it's Uvalde and everything that
Where
went
did
down
it?
there.
Before you go to your stats though, where did
Yeah.
it start with you?
Where did it?
When it became emotionally draining? Because I know
Uvalde.
exactly when. Really, it
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah, yeah.
Columbine.
Until then, I mean, well, Columbine, I was a kid, so yeah, it was. But even then, it just felt abstract to me. But
You weren't a
learning
kid
about
in
Uvalde,
Columbine, were you? I mean,
I was in high
we're
school.
the same age, so we're. I mean, it was like literally affected me.
I was in
Like,
high school.
okay, yeah,
Yeah,
me too.
yeah, yeah. So that's what I meant by a kid, high school kid. But yeah, no, it affected me, but it felt like abstract. It was weird because school shootings weren't a topic before Columbine. If you're young
No,
enough, you wouldn't know this. It simply did not exist in the public mindset at all. And then Columbine happens, and it's a big deal all of a sudden.
yeah, wasn't a
But
thing.
what's that?
It wasn't a thing. Yeah, you're right.
It wasn't a thing at all. But and as a kid, yeah, you thought about it. It's stuff that's in the news, and you think, oh, it's horrible, it's horrible. But the whole story of Uvalde is what made me think, oh my gosh, this is awful. The police department, the parents, you hear all these individual stories were so heart wrenching that a parent just couldn't go risk their lives to save their kid. They were being stopped, and it was kind of ongoing. There was a hostage situation on top of it. It wasn't just, an event that was over when the shooter got shot. So there were the up to minutes reports. By the time Evaldi happened, social media was 100% in full swing the way that it is now. So you saw the different ways of looking at it from
Yeah,
all the different perspectives, but it's especially the stories of the parents. But yeah, yeah, you said Columbine's what kind of that was the first time, it became a big thing for you. But yeah, Evaldi, it was a next level thing for me. Definitely.
Let me ask you this though: have you become numb to it, desensitized to it
If it
on a?
happened again, unless it was something that happened close by, I probably would feel a bit numb. It would it would be it wouldn't be within the bandwidth of carrying unless something novel happened. I mean, by carrying, I mean carrying in a special direct way. You care about everything. One of
Yeah,
the things when people talk about Israel and Palestine and stuff like that, right? And they talk about the Palestinian dead, I it's not that I don't care. I do care, but I care about them as much as I care about the Syrian civil war dead, 500,000, as much as I care about the South Sudanese dead, as much as I care about like the Congolese civil war, what that killed like 2.5 million people like 12 years ago.
the
I just
Rwandan
care about
genocide.
them the same. It's not a special care for me, right? And so it'd
Yeah.
be the same thing with school shooting. It'd be the same as any other child death. And Uvalde hit me at a different level just because of its uniqueness, I think. I know that sounds cold and callous to say, but I don't think I'm different than anybody else.
No, I don't think you are, and I think what you said makes sense because it's a local, right? You would
Yeah,
care if it's local on a national level. You just it's so often that you just
yeah.
get numb to it. So yeah,
There's
uh,
nothing to do about it. It's just human nature. That's just
yeah,
what happens.
yeah, and I will say that I myself as a parent, I have a 13-year-old boy. I get nervous,
Of course.
and it's something I think about constantly. Um, and
Yeah, that would be a whole
before
different thing. Sure.
before you get into further stats and stuff, there's two things that has happened recently at my son's school, which bothers the hell out of me, and it kind of prompted this conversation. So one
Mm.
is there was a child that made a threat. He made it on Instagram.
Mm.
Um, it was at like 7 a.m. The kid made a threat. 8 a.m. The FBI is contacting the school. So I was
Oh,
thrilled about that. And they
sure.
had, I shouldn't say the county or anything, but they had the sheriff out there immediately, and the local FBI pulled the kid out of school. They sent out a giant message to all the parents on their app, their Parent Square app, and it was over within a matter of minutes. So shocked about that. It was great, but it hit home, you know.
You do,
Um,
yeah. You would appreciate the quick response there.
yeah,
That seems
yeah.
impressively fast.
Yeah. And that makes me think, how many are they stopping?
Well,
This is in Ohio, in a corn county.
there's a lot. It's on the rise, but it turns out that most people, 80% of school shooters, tell someone like their classmates that they're planning on doing this.
That
That's one of
doesn't
the stats
surprise
that I
me.
found.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. But yeah, man, sorry to hear that. Glad that everything turned out the way that it did and turned out okay. But it happens a
And
lot.
this was like, yeah, this was like 2 months ago. And the most recent update is the school board voted to allow teachers to carry guns, which,
People
wow.
are split on that. My instinct is yeah, of course. I
Yeah,
mean, as a teacher that you should train, you should know what the hell you're doing, of course,
obviously,
and be
yes.
required to show that you know what you're doing.
But this is
You know,
something, and we
still,
go back to the Columbine, and this didn't happen before Columbine. This in my mindset, this doesn't happen in this area because
yeah,
it's Ohio.
yeah.
But and
It's
now we've escalated to the point where teachers need to bring guns into school,
yeah,
which is crazy.
it's an absolute insane switch. That it's a different world than when we were kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, completely. Let me go throw some very uplifting numbers to you, Josh. So there are two big organizations that I found that do stats. The Center for Homeland Defense and Security. I'll put links down, and also the Violence Prevention Project. And I listened to a pretty interesting interview with one of the founders of that as well, preparing for this. So here's the thing: from January 1970 to June 2022. There have been 2,069 shootings in kindergarten through 12th grade schools in the United States,
Oh my God,
resulting in 684 fatalities and 1,937 injuries.
that is insane.
Yeah, yeah. It's as this is an insane amount. But one thing that was in the back of my mind when I was looking this up is this is still, as far as scientific sample sizes, this is a really small sample size, right? So it's hard to get real big general trends with this amount of things happening. You
So
can. It's there's still a lot of shit you can learn from that.
so
But
we would have to go through the entire education system. Who was in the education system from what you said 1975 to 2024? That's 50 years.
1970 to 2022.
55 years, 53 years. Okay. Uh, so we do that, and that would roughly equal half the population of the United States. Let's say 150 million, right? Just ballparking it. And 648 out of 150 million. That's a
684.
yeah. So yeah, that's a relatively small size of the overall sampling.
Yeah, yeah. And to be fair, if you're trying to like, I'm thinking as far as like trying to develop like a cause and effect relationship as to what happens and what causes this. It means that it's going to be hard to find general trends, and then they discuss it,
Yeah.
especially in this interview with her name was Gillian Peterson. She's a co-founder of the Violence Project. She's a psychologist at Hamline University. I don't know how to pronounce it, but she was really open about the multiple different causes and things like this. And before I got to that, what was crazy when I was looking this up are the graphs, right? Because the Center for Homeland Defense and Security, and I'll post this link here. They've got graphs of locations, affiliations, stuff like that. So, of all these, the ones that were mentioned from 1970 to 2022, 43.1% were students, right? So that means that and former students only counted for like 3.7%. That was a little weird to me. If you would have just asked me, I would have said 90% were students, right? But no, it's under half. Under
Uh,
half were students.
Victims or perpetrators?
This is a
Okay.
perpetrator thing. Yeah, the school shooters affiliation, the shooter, him or herself. Let's be honest, himself in the vast majority of these,
Or
right?
they self.
Well, we're going 1970 to 2022, so the they
The
them thing
Nashville
probably
thing?
wasn't too
Yeah.
big.
Okay.
It wasn't probably too big. Location, 22.6% were in the parking lot. So these are more than any other one thing. This is where it happened. 9.8% classroom, 9.5% beside the building, 8.3 the hallway, 8.2 in front of the school. Then it goes track and field and goes kind of down from there, different random places. But most of these are done in the parking lot. As far as the situational cause, 37% is an escalation of a dispute. Kids are fighting, and then it escalates into one of them shooting another. What do you think the second cause was percentage wise? If you had to take a guess,
Uh, Jealousy or boyfriend girlfriend stuff.
accidents. 10.4% of school
Oh,
shootings are accidental. 7.6% is suicide or attempted suicide. 7.2% illegal activity and 7.2% drive-by shootings. Then it goes down to 4.9% indiscriminate shooting, domestic violence, and some other things down from there. But that's those are the
those are
more
some.
interesting things that
That's some
I've
interesting
found.
statistics there. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets pretty nutty. I did really so the interview with Gillian Peterson, one of the founders of the Violence Project. It was an interesting interview. It's 2 years old. It was done by the APA, the American Psychological Association, which is a little bit captured by intersectionalism. So it was a little, you had to roll your eyes at some parts of this interview. But, understanding that going in, I was like, oh, great, the fucking APA. I'm sure this will have some of that in it. And of course it did. But that being said, it was still a great interview. And Jillian Peterson is very on top of shit from what I could tell. So she says basically the mass shootings are on an increase. All right. And there's a number of factors at play. She stressed on the pandemic there was an increase in isolation,
Mm.
hopelessness. Kids are spending more time suicidality, I think is how you say that word. is on the rise. Record gun sales. All of these are risk factors for mass shootings. These were all on the rise during the pandemic. 98% of these shootings are done by men. What I thought was, I guess, interesting might be the right word, might not. So about 2/3 of these shooters have a history of mental health, right? But only about 10% of them are shown the cause of being psychosis. Psychosis being defined as an acute or chronic mental state marked by loss of contacts with reality, disorganized speech and behavior, and often by hallucinations or delusions seen in certain mental illness, such as schizophrenia and other medical disorders. So, straight up crazy person mumbling on the street shit is about 10% of this. They're usually suicidal beforehand. They attempted suicide or had thoughts of suicide before doing this. And what I said in the beginning, that's another thing I highlighted to mention. About 80% of school shooters tell their classmates that they're planning on doing this, at least one classmate, which is
Mm.
just crazy. Any thoughts on all that before I go on to what she said about prevention?
I had thoughts as you were going along, but I mean, going back to the statistics, is there regional
There
stats?
are. I didn't, on the specific sites that I looked up, I didn't get to the regional breakdown
I'm thinking
stuff.
urban, suburban kind of thing. Is it
I didn't
is
notice, and it wasn't on the pages that I.
escalations occur in different areas
Yeah, I mean,
percentage
you think escalation's probably closely tied to like gang violence too,
yeah,
right? Those are
yeah,
probably hand in hand. I kind of saw those as one and the same. Like those would
yeah,
be more of like an urban school, where there's a lot of gang violence, and bringing it would also go hand in hand with parking lot. If your kids in
yeah.
the parking lot,
That's
one of them
really
pulls a gun on another. That's a
yeah.
huge thing, and it doesn't
I
surprise me that that's most of it.
and I guess my other thought is that they talk about who does this and their level of psychosis and whatever. Most of these are suicides, and the people are dead by the time anybody gets to them. So how do they get this information if it's not known prior?
My guess is they're relying on like what law enforcement says in like their investigations and what the conclusion is that they come to.
So
Because I
going
mean,
through somebody's notebook that they
going through their
glued.
notebook, talking to their parents, getting all this information. I didn't. I just had that thought in my head, but I didn't verify that. I'm like, oh, this must be how they're getting this
Okay.
information. They're just
Uh,
relying on what law enforcement says, which is as good as anything else, probably. I mean,
yeah.
it's an imperfect. You can't get inside of their heads 100%, right?
Uh,
But
let's move on. What were you going to the cures or the ways to combat
So
this?
prevention is a
Prevention.
big thing. You mentioned the FBI thing, so maybe before I get into that, you mentioned the FBI thing at your local school and them coming in within contacting the school within an hour. That seems very much like what one should do. I watched a couple TEDx talks as well. There's a guy named Aaron Stark. I'll post a link to this, who had a TEDx talk in Boulder titled "I Was Almost a School Shooter," and it was really interesting, really emotional.
Mm.
One of the things he says that the trends of arming teachers and telling the FBI that there might be a threat isn't necessarily a good thing because it could ruin a troubled youth's life because one person thinks they're going to be a shooter. Me personally, doing the math, I think he's wrong. And the chance of there being a school shooter warrants this kind of response because safety first. But I
Yeah.
understand his point that, these are troubled people and, that might have ruined his life. And he turned out, to be a family man, have kids, turn out to be a good guy
Is he
and work
wait? Is
through
he
this.
saying he's not? It's not a deterrent.
He. This is a short TEDx talk. From what I recall, he didn't really mention that it was a deterrent or not,
Okay.
but that it's going to ruin a kid like his life. Which, if yeah, point taken. But doing the math, if you, it's kind of a fuck around and find out thing, right? You can't be like saying, "Oh, I'm going to kill everybody in the school," and have there be no consequences. You've crossed a line to where now you are fully being dealt with by the law. End of
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Hopefully. I that's where I want to talk with Mark about criminal justice reform. I think this is one of the things that him and I might disagree on, and you and I might disagree on too. But just because a kid gets arrested for that doesn't mean lock him up and throw away the key. Criminal justice needs to be way, way better at dealing with mental illness. And if you
Yeah,
look into this, it does the court system is it has some bright spots, but overall pretty awful in this
I
from what I've
also
seen.
I might agree with you on some things with criminal justice system because I don't like the idea of mandatory minimums
Yeah,
and how
agreed.
it's not judged on a case by case basis or by the person itself or
Yep.
the it's just instantaneous level of crime prescribed punishment. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It should be about specific. There should be no politicization at all. It shouldn't be that make examples of. I hate when people say that, like, "Oh, we need to use a court to make an example of someone." Yeah, I get your point, but it's not fair to that person. We should be judging everything on an individual basic basis. The individual is the unit of measurement
yeah,
for modern Western civilization. If it is not, we have a whole host of problems. It's the individual. And no individual should be made an example of per se. I mean, if you want to change laws, yeah, sure. But just holding somebody up as see. Oh, the Los Angeles fire looters, for instance, you hear a lot of
mm,
people on the news saying, oh, we need to make an example of these people. We need to have laws that arrest people appropriately for these. None of this under which they voted out, thank God, the $950 being a misdemeanor if you steal under $950, that's gone away because of the last votes with like a
heard that.
75%. Yeah. 75% of the people voting it away, which was great. But yeah, where was I going? Yeah. So if the FBI arrests that kid because they say that, this should not be okay. Automatically lock him away and throw away the key. Our tax money should have resources devoting to helping this kid because it's still a kid, and if they are just beyond the pale and they are a real danger to society, there should be an actual scientific way of figuring this out as best we can in our imperfect world and determine what to do with this person, right? And that doesn't mean torturing a young person for the rest of their life. That doesn't, which is throwing them in federal penitentiary to some way, shape, or form. Kind of is that.
Right.
We don't deal with these things in a nuanced way for very good reasons, I'm sure, but it's not good enough. We're the United States of America, and we pay a huge amount of taxes, and we have a lot of smart people. The criminal justice system should be far better than it is, so that this person, Aaron Starks, Aaron Stark rather, shouldn't need to have that opinion because it should not be an end of the world sentence for this kid. There should be a better system. But yeah, the FBI should be involved as soon as possible, just like what happened that you were saying, and you should if a teacher can arm themselves and they can pass a high standard, which should be a very, very, very high standard, safety first, because accidental shootings, as we just saw, are a huge cause of these shootings, and that should never happen, not even one fucking time, right?
And that
So
that's just like them having the gun in their backpack and it going off, right?
yeah, something like that. It just said accidental shooting. I didn't read like the details of everyone, but
Yeah,
yeah, that would be one for sure. Yeah, just having a gun at school, just like in
that's really
just
interesting.
playing with it or something like that.
Yeah,
Having to go off in your backpack, throwing your backpack in your locker, and it hits the freaking trigger or whatever, and shoots the kid next to you or something. Like,
yeah, that's not
okay,
funny.
this would happen,
I don't know
right?
why I'm laughing.
And then once again, a small sample size too.
Yeah,
So, as awful as this is, because it's so horrible, it's disproportionately taking up space in our minds. If we look at it from just a number of kids dying, you
yeah.
know, 684 dead kids over 50 years is not a huge percentage of
It's
dead kids.
not, but I don't think we should ever have any period that when they go to school.
Oh yeah, there's a reason why it's so big in our minds, right? Because
It's
it's
you're
all school should be like a
targeting children, and
It should be
Yes,
like a sacred, safe space for kids.
it absolutely should be.
Yeah,
It
that's
should be a
too big of an
palace, and there
issue.
should be a guard at every entrance. There should be metal detectors everywhere. There should be wanding, and yeah. I have a child. Can you tell?
Yeah, no, no, that makes perfect sense to me, 100%.
Yeah.
But we could go on forever. We're at like 25 minutes here. Is this a wait? What you something you want to close with?
Yeah, I mean, we're continuing this talk. This can lead way down the path of gun control, but
Hmm.
also I'd like to see some kind of statistics on Europe, on Asia, on Latin America. How are they? They don't have this kind of problem?
I don't think any other country has this even close to us. I did not research anywhere outside the U.S., but I think you're right. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. So
But do they
what's
have an
unique to our culture?
escalation in knife violence? So, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's
I
shit.
know that they do. Like I know England has recently, its knife crime has been increasing, but I don't know how that translates to in school, right? Like these American things, they seem very unique, right? Like there's a very unique psychological cause. Like one thing I found interesting, they talked in this interview about whether radicalization, like political radicalization, is a cause of this. Jillian Peterson said
Yeah.
there's there's a decent amount, I can't remember what the percentage is, there's a decent amount of people that are in these like radicalized websites and stuff like that, but they almost always come at the end or towards the end, and the kids are already on this kind of path to crazy to begin with, so much so to where they really don't know what they're talking about. Like when they're interviewed, they can't really say, you know uh, they can't really give details about their ideology. They can't even explain what it is in a lot of cases. So this was just like the final thing on a path that they were going down anyways, of just losing their minds or becoming detached socially. And like it was something that Aaron Stark said. He was the one with the TEDx talk. Is that the thing that made him not go through this shooting is his best friend. His best friend that kept showing him kindness, even though he stole from his best friend. He lied to his best friend. His best friend let him stay there. It's through these simple acts of kindness that kept him from going through with this. And he said, he wanted to, at that point when he was ready to go through with this, he just wanted to do as much damage as possible. He didn't care if it was like in a school or if it was in a cafeteria at a mall, or a food court rather, at a mall. He just wanted a place with low security with a lot of bodies, right? But this kindness of his friend, this simple human, having a human connection, is what stopped him from doing it. So, and I mean, if we talk about cause, probably the one cause would just be not having that network that a human needs,
Yeah.
you know, and it can cause things like that through all these multiple crazy freaking causes. I feel like if you listen to someone like Jonathan Haidt, he talks about this kind of stuff a lot, or Tristan Harris, that with just kids being on cell phones all the time and social media and all the negative things that happen. I think that's a huge factor too. But it's crazy, man. Let's just hope that we reach some kind of crescendo to where it starts going back down. We start learning more about this, start paying attention. Parents, maybe they're educated to warning signs and they can intervene earlier before it gets to the FBI.
Yeah.
We can only hope, right?
Yeah.
Any final words for real this time?
No, I'm
I
good.
don't
I
want
think
you to
we
throw
have.
a shoe at me like you always threaten to do with Mark.
I
All
think
right.
we're
Next
good.
time will be a happier topic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We need to lighten it up a little bit.
All right.